it's interesting to hear you talk about Tom Hiddleston. Like, you were understudying him a couple of times. I imagine you guys having a coffee and kind of chatting and stuff like that. And then you guys were in a scene together in that amazing TV series, The Night Manager. Yeah. And it's not just a scene. I mean, it's an epic fight scene. I mean, can you tell us about that process? And I thought you were brilliant, mate. Like, my wife and I love that show. And when you turned up, I screamed at the TV. Like that bit in DiCaprio when he goes, I was like, babe, that's my mate Harry. Like, and she's like, what? I was like, that's the guy, man.
Did you want to give him a sort of extra jab for all them times that you wasn't sick when you were an understudy? Extra sort of one ad.
That it was when Tom dragged me outside. I was thrown over this onto this car bonnet and punched. And well, Drew, I don't know if you remember back in drama school with with fight training and all that sort of stuff. You always wanted to do the best you could, so it looked like the films you grew up with. But
mate, you nailed it though, bro.
Special guest episode.
Thanks for returning for another special guest episode. This week we are in talks with Harry Attwell, who has been very prevalent in theatre, TV and movies, working with some huge names in the industry in both sectors. Stay tuned to hear many interesting stories around his career. Welcome back, guys. Today we have another special guest, and thanks to Drew. Drew's friend is going to come and join us. He has got lots of experience in the theatre, in the movie industry, and we're very, very excited to have a chat to him. And Drew's going to do a proper introduction.
So I'm incredibly excited to introduce our wonderfully talented guest, Harry Attwell. An exceptional actor of both stage, TV, and the big screen, having worked with the likes of Claire Foy, Andrew Garfield, Jude Law, Tom Hiddleston, Richard Armitage, Rafe Spall, just to name a few. Directed by legends like Michael Grandage, Jamie Lloyd, to mention a couple there. And he also voices the character of Sherlock Holmes in the fantastically popular and epic podcast Sherlock & Co., directed by Adam Jarrell. So, yeah, man. Welcome, Harry. Thank you so much for carving out some time for us here at Rage Whale.
That's all right. Thank you so much for having it. It's a lovely introduction, but you never know where to look when someone's saying all those nice things. So I'm just looking around slightly bemused. But thank you so much. It's a joy to be here, chaps. I'm a big fan, so thank you very much.
Dude, you absolute legend. Well, I was just going to say, let's take it back to the beginning, man, because you were a humble usher, sir. I remember that we worked together at the Dominion, and I literally just knew Harry as this really kind, sweet man at work that, could make a great Jack Daniels and Coke. But I didn't realize there was all this amazing kind of talent behind him, because he was just he's not like a typical actor where it's like, oh, you might have seen me in this thing. He's a very humble man. And it wasn't until I started to see a lot of the work that he's done, I'm like, dude, how do you stay so grounded when you're connected to some of the most amazing projects going?
Well, do you know what? I was recently listening to the Paul Bullion episode that you guys did with Paul, because of course I was there at the same time as Paul and with Drew as well. And I think Paul said it really, he had a really good sort of take, I think, on that industry. And I think I'm right in thinking, Drew, I'm not sure about yourself, but with Paul as well, we're not musical theatre people. One of my first jobs out of drama school was a musical, and one of the reviews said, not all the actors can sing. And so I'm not sure whether that was me included. I love musicals, I have to say. And I when I was growing up doing Amdram, I thought maybe I could give it a whirl. I realised quite quickly, no, that was never going to happen. But working front of house at the Dominion, We Will Rock You. It's a musical theatre house, and so you kind of had a slightly different head on than some of our colleagues who were wonderful, brilliant musical theatre performers. But I guess they looked at what was happening on the stage with a kind of sense of, I could do exactly that, whereas I could do theatre and I could do plays, of course, but I never had that sort of anything other than sort of sheer enjoyment as I had as a kid watching Rock You or whatever it may be, hundreds and hundreds of times as we did. So it was always, for me, it's that experience, and not that this is a bad thing to say, I don't think, but people pay. This is a long time ago. That's when I started. My first time there was 2006, I think. So ticket prices have shot up, as we all know. People pay a hell of a lot of money to have a good night at the theatre, and as long as they don't disrupt it too much for each other, front of house, as I always found, was part of the joy of the job, was to try and make sure that if there was ructions, especially a show like Rock You, The Bodyguard, there was always a few drinkers, and so it was. I always quite enjoyed it. I found it like a big playground in a way. The longer you were there, you just went up the ranks and you became sixth form and you became a prefect or whatever system you worked in your brain, to kind of think, right, I can cope with this madness. And it's a 3 3/4 hour shift, and then you get your days free. It was good for auditions and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I always really enjoyed my time there.
Dude, it was just such a mad mix of talented people in amongst their other jobs. Do you know what I mean? It was this funny thing that we were saying. There was a time where my friend Gary Lake, when we were ripping tickets at like the Lion King, for example, and some of the customers would come through and just be like, "Here's my ticket," and being very kind of blasé about it. And then I cracked a joke, said, "Hey, dude, one day he might be on that stage, man. You don't even know." And now he's actually playing Scar in the Lion King. So 1 minute he's ripping tickets, next minute people are going to be ripping tickets to go and see him. So it's like, you never know. It was just such a funny thing how I said that pigeons got more respect than ushers did at the time. So
totally. And if I could interject with a story which I always have in my brain, because I'm trying to think whether it was your time or who it was, but one of my colleagues from the Dominion was doing the pickup, which is part of the system, especially a big theatre like that. It's a mess at the end of a show. And one of my colleagues was doing the pickup at the end of the show, which we all kind of died. If you did the bar, you could, whatever, you sort of all, it was part of the gig. And a chap said to his child, his child, that's what happens if you don't do your exams. To one of us, and if it had been me, depending on if I'd had enough coffee, maybe I'd have listed a few other credits on the CV. But you're right, the way they used to talk to you, the way they talked to you on the bar, the way that, somebody caught my name tag once and shouted, "Harry, get a move on," and you're like, and I don't know if you remember, Drew, there's a wonderful theatre in the Dominion. We've still got very good friends that work there. The downstairs bar on a busy matinee interval, it was the intervals that were always terrifying because you're always on a clock, 15-minute, 20-minute clock, absolutely terrifying. So all you could do
serve about 200 people,
like a Helm's Deep type thing. You're like, right, here we go, here we go. That's it, on the cover. As soon as you serve the last person at the interval, it was the dream. But people, if we can do one shout out, I think it's to people respect ushers, because like you say, it's well, for some people, I think in the States you find it's a job for life. It's a very different sort of mentality, I think, their front of house system, whereas here there's managers and things that do it their whole lives, but whereas, as we know, it's often performers and artists or people kind of going through the system, but it's that respect, I think. Yes, it's a good thing to remember.
100%.
It's just human decency, isn't it, to speak nicely to anyone, no matter what job they're in.
Exactly.
And like you said, and as it's proven on this, are talking to Paul and yourself and stuff like that, a lot of people in the acting industry have to start somewhere. And where are you going to start? If you can start somewhere where you're involved in acting, or at least it's part of your day-to-day job, or meeting people, that's better than working in a restaurant, for instance. At least you're in the world of it, at least, aren't you?
Yeah, that's it. And it's a very, like we were saying a minute ago, it's a very, very good job, very practical job for daytime auditions, for prepping stuff. For me, I did some of my, which we're probably coming on to with theatre work, some of the bigger jobs, if you will, of my theatre career. You finish those, it's a month later, or I got better at kind of condensing the gap between finishing a big gig and being a bit like, yeah, right, where's the next one? And then you realise, no, that's not always how it works. It's certainly not how it works for me, and never has. And so I got a lot better at going, fuck it, who cares? I'll just go back to the Dominion. And there, again, if anyone of them are watching, they were always amazing. And you'd send them an email, say, if there's any spaces, I'd love to come back. And so it sort of became a really nice stopgap job, because especially when you went back as well, you had that kind of experience. You knew what you were kind of it was always an array of things, but you knew what it was going to be like, so you could get that head on again, going, right, I'm just going to try and enjoy the time that I'm there, and that thing of waiting. And as I say, I think it really is an advantage for actors, especially maybe younger actors. You've got your days free, so you're not feeling. I've done a lot of temping jobs. We can do a whole podcast on the array of jobs I've done. But when you're in an office and it's 9 to 5, 8 to 6, whatever, that's when you can sometimes get scuppered a little bit with auditions, having to ask somebody, can I extend my lunch break? It's changed a lot with self-tapes, but I remember taking a lunch break about 10 in the morning once from an office job, because that's what my audition slot was in Leicester Square. I was working near Victoria, I think. So, and you don't know how long an advert auditions are going to last, so you could be in there for ages, or you can be in and out. And it was always that panic, whereas front of house work doesn't really start until 5:30, 6 o'clock, and auditions were always finished. So again, it sort of lent itself quite well to that, really.
Yeah, I remember when I was doing a promo gig, I had to pretend I had a runny stomach so that I could run to a cubicle, take out my phone and learn my lines for an audition that was in like half an hour or something, and then just go, I've got to go on my lunch break now, or like, it was just so stressful though, man, to kind of juggle that.
Always.
And I think theatre, like you said, gives you that kind of flexibility and that kind of freedom to go for those auditions and stuff, man.
Sorry to interrupt the show. Just a reminder to say we love and appreciate you all for listening to the podcast, whether it's on Spotify, Apple, or Amazon. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, follow, as this really helps us continue to progress and improve the content and keeps us making these fun episodes for you guys. Oh, we're also on these things called Instagram and TikTok. You can follow us there too, as we share short, funny reels on the reg that you can share with friends if you like. Now, back to the mayhem.
What is it you love about stage as opposed to screen? Because when I look at your CV, you've got so much stage work, and I'm just curious, where does your kind of love for stage come from, or what is it that makes you go, do you know what, if I'm not available for castings for like adverts or movies because I'm in this play, but this is where I want to be, sort of thing?
Yeah, I suppose there's a bit of that question which it's sort of out of one's control in a way. Obviously, depend.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I wish I was at the point of being able to ever pick and choose, but you're right. Yeah, exactly. No, I'm not going to do that.
I'll film this week, please.
Yeah, exactly. Please. Although people often say to you, the old adage of, "Why don't you write to EastEnders? You'd be great in EastEnders." Yeah. Oh, I haven't thought of that, but one day I will. But for me, I guess it starts with that. Really, it's that idea of, I just started to do more theatre. I think when I graduated, it was the days again of slightly different. I think there was a thing called PCR, which was quite a tiny little magazine thing almost. I used to go back to my old drama school. PCR was about 10-page red thing, A4 pages, and it used to list fringe jobs and all that sort of stuff, and places like the London Film Academy, London Film School, they would need 3 men, 3 women, or cis men, cis women, whatever, and you'd write off, and you would I started just to build up my CV quite early days of getting bits and pieces like that, especially fringe theatre, and then it slowly built up, as it does with these things. You get noticed a little bit more. I did a production of Hamlet which was a TIE job, I have to say, a theatre and education job based at the Orange Tree. But because it was the Orange Tree, I was playing Hamlet there. It was for schools. It was a great company called the Young Shakespeare Company, and you were doing TIE, but you did it at the Orange Tree, so all the kids came to the theatre, and I think it was that was about 2006, 2007, and that just pinged out a little bit more, I think, than other stuff that I'd done, and that sort of got the ball rolling a bit more. With regards to actually enjoying theatre, I think I do say that. I do say to people, if people say to you sometimes, which do you prefer if you had to choose? There's something for me about theatre, which is there's the longevity is is lovely. Like you say, it does take you out of the picture. And I've worked with no names or anything. I did a temping job a few years ago, and somebody told me they'd been offered a gig at the National. Quite a young actor, this was, been offered a gig at the National, which would have been a 6-month contract, and he was quite reticent about actually doing it because it was 6 months in a play, but it was the National. And I sort of sat there and I'd never heard anyone say, I might not do this play at the National because it might, contain me. And I don't know, I don't know, I'm 21 years into this, bizarre business, and I don't think I'm green, but there are times when you hear things and you go, I never had that brain. I still don't have that brain. I just sort of think you feel lucky to get the work. And with theatre, like I said, especially if you're fortunate enough to get a longer tour or say a job in town which lasts 4 or 5 minutes. Excellent dog. I've got some cats. I was going to say I've got 3 cats. They're probably 3. They'll be appearing at some point.
Basically a cat, Kev. Look at it.
Perfect.
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt, but the dog was scratching at the door to come in, so I had to go and get it. Otherwise, it would have made noise.
That's why I say this is the Mayhem podcast. Like, there'll be cats out of your head at one point. There'll be one headbutting me.
This is perfect. I've wedged this door open. I'm in the spare room because I didn't want the cats doing exactly that.
Hey, we love cats, mate. If they want to, you can let them in, man. They could be your extra guests, your +1 or your +3.
Yeah, Drew's got a bunch of cats around, and my cat's on the cat shelf or just above my desk, right there.
Mine's got 3 legs, so I can't come up the stairs properly.
Bless it. Wow. Reg has just left the room, so we'll get Reg back in a bit if we can.
Yeah.
But anyway, theatre for me, there's something about the longevity. Once you get a theatre gig, it does take the weight off my shoulders a little bit, especially if, like I say, if it's a longer contract. You know that you're sorted for a bit. You're in the world, and it's a very precarious business, and always has been. And I say this sort of readily to lots of people. I will never sort of try and shy away from the fact that for me, over 21 years, I have had ups and downs and continue to. And one of my biggest jobs, I did production of Hamlet, which started in London, and we transferred to Broadway, and we were on Broadway for 3 months, and it was incredible. And everything that you kind of put into that Broadway bubble in your head is sort of real. The things that you see, the people you meet, the experience, the life experience. And as I was alluding to earlier, I came back and absolutely nothing for 9 months. And I rented a flat in Highgate because I thought I'd made it. And that was a difficult time when I had to, catch up on those bills.
Highgate is tasty. I used to live around the corner in the cheaper seats, but wow.
Lovely. The flat was basically about the size of this room, I have to say, but I adored it, and it really felt like this is great. This is it's all happening. I was about 27, 28. Yeah, totally.
Whereabouts was it, if you don't mind me asking?
It was. But is it called
Archway Bridge?
Yeah, that's the kind of focal point that you sort of remembered. If you were the Highgate side of that, there was just a bunch of buildings and just in a flat there, and it was lovely. It was a great place, a great year. But I finished this job on Broadway, got back, and was like, right, wicked, bring on the next one, off we go. And like I say, I swear, 9 months, and I didn't work again. And you just go, what on earth is this business, and how do you? It's just like tangent, I suppose, but it's that thing of coping constantly within yourself and with your peers. You've got pressures in commas almost, because I've got to say my parents have always been amazing, my sister's amazing, my immediate family, and my wife is wonderfully patient with the chaos of it. But you do get people now and then going, well, why, what's this, why are you not doing the next thing, why has this not happened? And you're having to constantly answer, I think, for the unknown questions. You can't explain it. Like, why on earth can you do that massive gig and then you walk out and there's absolutely nothing? So as I said, when I get these jobs, I love it, and I cling on to them, and I just try and enjoy, whether it's I've worked at the Exchange up in Manchester, and that contract's usually 8 weeks, 9 weeks, a lot shorter than a job in town, say, or a tour. If I get them, just try and relish it, just try and enjoy it.
Well, because that's almost like the Fassbender curse, where he finished what was it, Band of Brothers. And he splurged loads of money thinking that this is it now. I've just worked with Spielberg. It's going to just like elevate my careers off there. And he just spunked all this money and then nothing for months. And he's like, oh, wow. I had no idea these massive kind of gaps, this hiatus between gigs. And it just, he said it was just such a kind of eye opener, really. so yeah, you've worked with some incredible directors, man, like Michael Grandich and like Jamie Lloyd. I mean, I queued, right? Michael Grandich is like a kind of juggernaut of a theatre director. When there was the play Othello, Chewie was Othello, obviously, and Ewan McGregor was playing Iago, and then Tom Hiddleston was playing Cassius.
Yeah.
And mate, the queue was around the block. Like the tickets sold out pretty much overnight, and thousands of people were just gathering to watch this kind of Michael Grandich version of Othello. So yeah, but what's it like to work with kind of big named directors with that kind of caliber and that kind of these big movie stars attached to it? Because I'd be so nervous, man. I was like, how does one deal with those kind of nerves and with these projects?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's hindsight, and there's times when I've not been very cool, or I've tried to be cool, and you, I don't know. I think I've got a few years on all of you chaps actually, but people in their 20s, I sort of I crave that time again, but I sort of don't in a way, because I think I was always trying to never be cocky, never be too much, but you get comfortable with people, and you try to kind of maybe be ultra funny on your first day, or you try to be, you try to drop in a clanger, or you try to be again, going back to my 20s, I had a real sort of, I don't know, love of the darkest of humours, and that's great when you've been with a company for 3 months, but then your first day with the next batch and you're kind of trying to make some horrendous joke. And for instance, I was once talking to this lovely lady, and we were being told, I think the stage manager came over and was just like, right guys, it's tea break now, and I just turned to her and said, but not for you, because you're a twat. And she was so offended, absolutely mortified, and I kind of, you walk away from this and you just think, why on earth have you done that? But like I say, it's that thing of trying to like hit these things running, and just try to be cool, but then also try to be nice. Obviously, I never said that to her. Maybe I've known him a long time, but maybe I've said it to Michael Grandich in a jokey way, but never call him a twat. I think, yeah, exactly, maybe. My first job with him was production of Twelfth Night. There was a 4-season. It wasn't too long after the Othello. I think it was the following year. It was the Don Mar, but in the West End, and so he did 4 plays back to back, which was Ivanov, which was Ken Branagh, and Tom Hiddleston again. Then there was Twelfth Night, Madame de Sade, and Hamlet, which was the Hamlet that we took to Broadway. So I was really fortunate.
Well remembered.
I got it well. I know. I've got some notes here for possible
10
questions.
To Gryffindor.
Yeah,
and you did really
exactly.
well, mate.
Just in case.
Just to let the listeners understand, me and James are a little bit like deers in the headlight here. Like, I've heard of Hamlet.
Yeah,
we're going to be diving into some theatre, guys. Get ready.
Yeah, no, I'm interested. I want to hear.
I went to a show at Broadway. That's about all I know about it. I bought some I Love New York t-shirts.
And as long as you were nice to the ushers, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. That's the moral of the story. Just be nice to the people ripping the tickets, man.
Yeah, I think that's the key. But anyway, I did a bit of Shakespeare. Going back to what I was saying earlier, the TIE, the Theatre and Education Company. Over a few years, I did different productions with them. And as I was saying, I think the Hamlet at the Orange Tree that I mentioned sort of springboarded me, I think, to certain casting directors spotting that I'd done that, and so I was called in for Twelfth Night, and it was Derek Jacobi as Malvolio, and then you had Inda Ravama, who's an amazing actor in so much at the moment, and Sam Spiro, Victoria Hamilton, lots of really established British actors, theatre, and Mark Bonner, who again is somebody, I think he's actually appearing in Traitors, the Celebrity Traitors this year, which is very exciting. I've not spoken to Mark Bonner for quite a while, but I might DM him at some point, see how the Traitors goes, because I'm fascinated by him being in that. But it was an offstage understudy part, which, for those that don't know, they need people in the theatre just in case somebody goes off halfway through the play. It happened. I've been in plays where it's happened. Sometimes something goes wrong, somebody gets sick, and you've got an understudy who there isn't enough for them in the play to actually be in it, but they have to have a few sort of spares, so to speak, backstage.
Yeah.
And I did that, and so that was 3 months of you learn obviously your parts, and you turn up every day. You're in the theatre from the beginning of the show to just before the end. They keep you until almost the final scene, so they know that their back is covered in case someone's sick. And I did that, and it was it was a dream. It was a joy. And growing up, my dad, he was a London fireman. My mum's originally from London, so London was always a big part of my life with regards to coming up to see shows or family. I've got aunties and things all around London, so I always came up to London from where I'm from, down in Kent, and the West End. I say this carefully because what I want to always, when I do talk to actors about the West End, I want to always sort of say to young actors or whoever, it's not the be all and end all. It is not the be. I've got friends that are super successful, much more successful than me, and they've never done a play in the West End. But that doesn't mean that they haven't done an array of amazing things. It's just fallen that way. That I think, like I say, growing up, I used to come up for matinees on my own when I was in my teens, and just to kind of experience it and enjoy it. And I always loved it. And so when I got that first gig, I remember I was in an HSB. I have to say I was temping. I was doing a temping job. I can remember so many random details. I was in an HSBC on my squished in lunch break, and my agent, the agent I was with at the time, rang me and told me, and I broke down and I cried, and not for the first time. I've cried subsequently because of sometimes a job it's such a relief you get it, or you really fought for it. And it was an amazing thing, and I did like I said, I did 2 plays in this one particular season, and then you were suddenly, like you were saying, to work with Michael, the Donmar had that wonderful reputation because before Michael was the artistic director, Sam Mendes was the artistic director.
Yeah, of course.
I'm trying to think whether he finished that and then he did American Beauty. So you knew who he was, you knew that reputation. Michael had worked in, he was the artistic director of the Crucible Theatre in Sheffield before, and had done Othello and an array of plays at the Donmar. And it felt like you were part of, it wasn't like it was suddenly, I don't want it to sound like, I walked out of drama school, I walked into it because I didn't. It was about 3-4 years later. But you were in the business, you were in the world that it was since I was a kid. You sort of aspired to, but just didn't think it just didn't seem possible. It wasn't. I couldn't put the dots together how that might happen. And then as it was happening, you were trying to catch up with it a little bit and go right. Yeah. Now I understand. And Michael makes you. He's got a control over a room. But without ever, I've never heard Michael Grandage raise his voice. He's got a control, power, but I mean that in the best possible way. I think it's respect. That's what I mean by power. People, text sessions, for instance, you've got text. Texts are a bit of a nightmare when you're getting towards opening a play. You've got to do text, you've got to do dress rehearsals. Michael in a text session, again, very, very calm, very, very still warm, still gives you little tidbits, little notes every now and then. So you always feel like he's there with you, but he's not ever just kind of bombarding in and trying to sort of be the loudest voice in the room, because he knows he doesn't have to. I think he's a lovely man. So it was a nice place to begin that side of my career, working on bigger projects with somebody like him.
Mate, that was awesome. Yeah, I mean, and what a gig, right? For your agent to call up and be like, "How do you feel about working at the Donmar with Michael Grandage?" You're like, "Oh yeah." Well, yeah. So moving on from that, you work with the incredibly talented Jamie Lloyd, and the question I have for you is, what do you think gives Jamie Lloyd his edge and draws in such kind of big movie stars to work with him?
I don't know. I think, again, with Jamie, I've been lucky enough to work with Jamie twice. I did a play at the Old Vic in 2012 with him, as he was already established, was getting the ball rolling before he'd formed the production company, his own production. So he was obviously, he knew what he was doing. He was one of Michael Grandage's, I think the correct term is associate directors at the Donmar. So he was in some sort of, I don't know how long that contract was, but maybe a year. And so he was sort of Michael's shadow in a way. Wow. And Michael's got a few people like that. There's an amazing director called Sam Yates as well, who's, we'll come back to this later. Maybe there's a brilliant, I don't know if you've seen on the BBC, Towards Zero. There's been a recent Agatha Christie adaptation called Towards Zero on BBC One, which was recently on, and Sam directed that. He was the assistant director on the production of Hamlet I was talking about, and he's just had Andrew Scott's Vanya, One Man Vanya. That's Sam as well. And so Michael sort of had this amazing group of people that he were his assistants, were his associates, and they went on to these and lots of others that we could name, Amelia Sears, etc., who gone on to so many more things. And with Jamie, I think he just had this vision. I think he knew exactly what he wanted to do. Duchess of Malfi, which was the first play back in 2012, it was you look at Jamie's work nowadays with regards to the play I worked on with him most recently was Betrayal, which was Tom Hiddleston at the Harold Pinter Theatre, and it was a case of Zawe Ashton was in that and Charlie Cox, and it was pared down. The play as is, but no interval, 90 minutes. Jamie's very famous now. He works with an amazing designer called Sutra Gilmore, who he's worked with for a long, long time. And what Sutra and him, however they do it, they create this very, very stark box sets. Sometimes I don't know what it's called, what the material is called, but plain wood sets. Couple of chairs, that's about it. You know, he doesn't. With Betrayal, there was a couple of glasses. There was a restaurant scene at one point, but other than that, it was very, very pared back. The first play I did with Jamie was a little bit more, say, flamboyant with regards to costume. I had a 7-layer costume, and it was at the height of summer, so it was a warm play to be in that one. But it was a
and then
lot
the stage
more
lights as well, heating you up.
Exactly, and 900 people or whatever, you know, sort of it kept you busy, that one. But looking at the difference between working with him back then and then when I was on Betrayal, I was just again offstage understudy. I was covering Tom Hiddleston in that, and you were there for some of the rehearsals and things, and obviously engaging with people in a different capacity than, say, because it was a 4-hander. There was another chap in it as well, Eddie, who played this waiter. But you had the 3 core characters in Betrayal. So there's a very good film adaptation, I think, from the 80s with Ben Kingsley, Jeremy Irons, and Patricia Hodge, which is worth a look if anyone fancies engaging with that play through the means of film. But it was.
Doesn't it go in? Sorry to interrupt. Doesn't it go in reverse? It's so clever because it's almost
Exactly.
like,
It's
and you learn more as it goes in reverse. It's so clever.
And their understanding of the situation between the 3 of them, exactly that sort of. It's
that kind of love triangle in reverse. Yeah.
Totally, really great play. And seeing Jamie on Betrayal, he'd just done. I think he'd done a whole year's season of all of Pinter's plays. I think he covered his short plays, and you had people like Danny Dyer in them. Who else? Lots of names came through the system and did these plays, and very lucky to be in that, or like I say, understudy in that. And I think Jamie, it goes back to, like I said, the paring down, simplifying. So you're focusing on the text. I don't know if any of you guys saw the recent production, which is still on Broadway, of Sunset Boulevard, which is Nicole Scherzinger, it's the Andrew Lloyd Webber score, and it's still that in its essence. But this set, again, with Sutra designing, is basically just this massive mirror above the stage. And I think or is it a screen maybe? But at points it's reflected. Jamie loves his cameras as well, so you've got a lot of visual things and sounds. He has, which a lot of plays do these days, but Jamie really embraces it. The head mics, and there's a real thing I have lots of conversations with actors about. Should not in the musical sense, because head mics have been used in musicals for a long, long time, of course, of projection. To have a head mic in a play allows an actor to still do that thing which theatre is there for, which is to project. You are there to kind of make sure the people at the back get as strong a performance as the person in the front row, but you can drop the voice a bit, you can keep that intensity and the brilliance of the sound. They'll tweak that up for you a little bit, so you can slightly naturalise. Is that a word? Is that a word? Naturalise?
Yeah, that is a word. I was thinking.
Are you sure? Thank you so much. You can just. Cheers. You can drop that volume a little bit more, but it gets people's backs up. People don't always like that, but I disagree. I think it's good to have both options. You go to the Globe and you've got a boom. You do a play where you can bring it back a little bit more with sound. I think it just allows a little bit more naturalism to sneak into these things. And
that's
Jamie,
a great idea to tone it down, but still everyone be able to hear your whisper or more melancholy sort of approach. Definitely.
Yeah,
but it
absolutely.
I was going to say, it also makes sense, though, because he gets a lot of movie actors, so they're so used to being all very subtle, and then if they're mic'd up, if they haven't done theatre, like you said, they can still have that kind of intimate, filmic kind of performance, but just enhanced by the mic and stuff. So
what I've heard about Jamie Lloyd is that I've heard loads of people talking about the Seagull they did a couple of years ago, and everyone. I didn't know that was Jamie Lloyd till you guys mentioned it. I just searched while we're chatting, but
with Emilia Clarke.
Emilia Clarke, I heard of a lot of a lot of amazing stuff about that.
Yeah, I think again he sort of, I think with that production there was a lot of them sitting around in what you wouldn't expect the setting to be. He sort of turns things on its head, and I think that's why he's successful. I think that's why people crave to work with him, because he's about to do Waiting for Godot on Broadway with Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter. So he's reunited Bill and Ted doing Waiting for Godot, and you just think it's absolute genius, because that play, the way that play is written, and the dialogue that I have to say, I can't think of the names of the two characters those two are going to be playing, but I know the play with regards to how these characters will engage with each other, and I won't be able to get over that. I know I won't, but I'm fascinated by that. And what a coup for him to get that. So
that's quite recently that got announced, like maybe a month or so ago.
Yeah, I think it's been. I saw something on Instagram recently about it, and I don't know when it opens, but I know that he's got a Vita opening up in the West End. So he's the busiest man in showbiz. Like, he's got so many sort of fingers in pies and all sorts going on, and it's always interesting when you see one of his productions. You can see why they're, I won't say contentious, but you can see why people are intrigued. But also, I think his passion, being in the room with him, the love and the passion that he has for actors, that he has for performers. He trains as an actor. Same with Michael Grandage as well. Whether that's something to it, I think they understand both sides, and I think that's really helpful when you're getting notes or when you're having that understanding with them, because they've both been on that other side, and now they're in this amazing realm of being able to just flip it and get actors to engage in different ways. And I think they're both amazing.
Well, this brings me on to a really nice point, actually, because you were talking about like text, for example, and kind of talking of film as well. And you did a play twice, in fact, actually, To Kill a Mockingbird, when the text was rewritten by the master Aaron Sorkin.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, what is that like?
It was lovely. It was great. It was the same production, but I stayed on for two casts, and so we had the cast. Yeah, we had the cast change halfway through, and to work with him was lovely. He was there. We had rehearsals, and Sorkin was there for like the first 2 or 3 days where you do the table read and you pull the play apart, and then he came back for previews and was hands on, or you felt very supported by him. And I remember the very first day, it was during COVID, or it was tail end of COVID, so it was like early 20. We were supposed to open in 2020. I auditioned for it in 2019, and then it was getting closer, and lots obviously was. We don't need to go into that, but we all know a lot was happening and changing. And you got these emails, and basically it was postponed until after the West End sort of got going again. I think they wanted to make sure it had its own moment, its own fanfare, if you will, sort of in town, once town had kicked off again and we knew things were all right and we could all go back to work. And the first day of rehearsals, we had a massive big table in this rehearsal room. You had to still have the masks on. Of course, when you were reading, you took them off, things like that. But we were all quite separated. But it was a very exciting day, and I happened to be sat next to Sorkin, and he turned to me. I think it was after when we got to the interval for a break, and he just said, "Good job." And I just thought, I'm going to ride off of that. I had quite a small part. I had two, I played Boo Radley in the play, as well as another chap called Mr. Cunningham. Boo Radley is the one that you he's a real protagonist in the book, and because of the nature of the play, it's a very awful subject matter which continues to reverberate, which is race relations and racism and the awfulness that goes with that. And so the play is much more focused on Tom Robinson, who is the accused in this court case, and I think Sorkin wanted. They really had to focus on the court case. They really had to focus on Tom Robinson, and not even slightly, take away some of the sort of more, I guess, the gentle elements of the book. They're still there. It's a great adaptation, but I think, of course, you've got to focus on these things because they're the key to this and to the success of that story in that book. But to play somebody like Boo Radley, his version of that, I won't, no spoilers, for anyone that didn't see it, but he's a lighter element in the play, shall we say? But it it was that ability to kind of hear him talking about it. It was one of the first gigs that I'd ever turned up to the first day of rehearsals with the copy of the novel, loads of post-its. I was ready. I was like, yeah, Boo Radley's here. Boo Radley's here. Sorkin said first day, if you've got the novel, just keep it in your bag because we're gonna, this is our version. This is his adaptation. And so you quickly kind of, like you took it off your desk and you just put it underneath back in your bag. And he was a very, very interesting man. Very, again, one of those times you sort of, it's fascinating sometimes when you are in the room with these people. You remind yourself all the things they've done, and you just think, it's a, like I was saying earlier, it's a real privilege. And yeah, he was a great guy.
Mate, I feel like you need that on a T-shirt. Like Aaron Sorkin said, I did good.
Good job.
I mean,
I'll have it on my
also
gravestone.
to interject, so people listening, if they don't know who Aaron Sorkin is, he's written like screenplays and film.
A Few Good Men.
Yeah, from just to list a few: The Social Network, Moneyball, Steve Jobs, Molly's Game, West Wing. He's been in tons. Yeah, like you said, Malice, A Few Good Men. He's also he's an actor in a few things as well, like 30 Rock and Entourage and stuff like that. And I don't know if anyone's seen. I've not watched it yet because I'm waiting for it to fully finish. But The Studio on Apple.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. What is he? Did he write that?
He's in it. That's pretty much all Seth Rogen, that program.
Yeah, I was going to say, okay, I got really confused because I was thinking, hang on a minute.
But he's having loads of people from the real industry play themselves.
Yeah, no, it's genius. I'm on like episode.
Aaron Sorkin's playing himself in it.
Nice. No, it's brilliant. I recommend it. I highly recommend everyone watch The Studio. But what I wanted to say though, just going back to that, Harry, because you did it with the guy from the Waltons, man, was the lead, right?
No. Oh gosh, what's his? No, I think his name's Richardson. Yeah, he did the US tour. So he.
Okay.
We had 3 Atticus. We had Rafe Spall, as you mentioned earlier. We had Richard Coyle, who's a wonderful British actor for anyone listening. Doesn't know, but fantastic actor that's been around for years and years. And finally, it was Matthew Modine. So Matthew Modine came in for the final 6 months. And he was from Stranger Things and Full Metal Jacket and bits and pieces. And again, a very, really interesting having different ages, really, for a starter. Rafe and Rafe's, I think, younger than me, so he's sort of at 40 or just over 40. Richard Coyle a little bit older than Matthew Modine. Perhaps on Broadway, Atticus was played by Ed Harris, Jeff Daniels, and Greg Kinnear, I think. And so you had a slightly older chap playing him. So you knew that it worked with that older generation, or slightly older actor as Atticus. And then, like I say, with Rafe being much younger, you saw it happen. It works again. It's that sort of story where I think the Atticuses that we had, they were very different. But Aaron's sort of his adaptation, his writing, and Bartlett Sher, who's our director on the show, he, again, an amazing Broadway director, done opera, done plays, done musicals, an amazing guy. And between them, they created this world which needed, as I say, to keep that sensitivity of the story, but open it up to an audience, because you've got Broadway audiences and British audiences. Very different approach, I think, to going to the theatre, to engaging with the show, and somehow that play seemed to transcend between the two. And having Matthew Modine as a part of it, in our final run when we were in town before, Cutthroat Island. Like, I went to see Cutthroat Island at the cinema and absolutely loved it. And it's always that thing when you work with certain people. It's like, when do I say it? When do I say blah 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 blah? Because there's certain films that obviously certain people are more famous for or more well known, and Cutthroat Island, as you guys, I'm sure you know, wasn't the biggest success. I think it killed for the production company. Was it Carol Co? I think it did. It didn't do as well as it should have done, in my opinion. If ever it's on TV, anyone should catch it, because it's a great pirate film. But I told him one day, I turned to him and just said, I hope it's okay to say. And you would hear him telling stories about Kubrick, about Full Metal Jacket and Stranger Things or whatever. And if he's one of those people that's been in the business for a long time, and he's done so many sort of big hitters. So it was a real, again, privilege. It was a real eye opener to kind of be able to work with these people, and he's a very lovely man, very very generous spirit to be around.
Sorry. I just got really excited. I just realised he was in The Dark Knight Rises as well.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. That's the
Yeah,
thing. He crops up.
Yeah, he plays the cop that Gary Oldman's character. Why have I completely forgotten his name now? Gordon.
Good, yeah.
Commissioner Gordon. He goes to his house and tries to rally him back and say, "You need to help us fight Bane and all these people and stuff." So, I mean, that's just mad to think when you're on stage and you're trying to stay in character and not be like a fan. You're not trying to fan out on stage. You go, "Oh my god, That's the guy from Whoa, what's my name?" You'd be like,
"Yeah, precise."
I mean, that's a good point. What from the stuff you've done, you know, whether it's stage or film, and you've been around, you know, not to be like a fanboy about celebrities or whatever. I can just see a cat, Harry.
Yeah, so this is Reg.
Lemur.
He takes after his dad with his ginger, so he's, you know, he's a good lad.
Yeah. So like from the people that you've met, what's has there been anyone that's really kind of, you know, set you back and gone, oh my god, I can't believe I'm in this room? I'm sure there's lots, but is there someone that's really kind of engaged you, gone like, I just can't speak to them because they're too, I'm just going to mess it up?
Yeah, I suppose a lot.
Or did you mess it up?
I think I've got away with it just about, but there's been a few times where you, like I said, feeling very fortunate when you walk in those rooms, and it's for different reasons sometimes. And so I'm lucky enough to do a couple of Michael Grandage done a few films, and I've been in both of those. And the first one is a film called Genius, which sort of, it didn't get a massive release. I don't think it's been on. I've seen it on, I think, on Amazon Prime, and my brother-in-law watched it on a plane, I think. So it's out there. But a film called Genius is about a writer called Thomas Wolfe from the 30s. Really interesting character, and it had Jude Law, Colin Firth, Nicole Kidman, Laura Linney, Guy Pearce, Dominic West. It's an amazing array. But you were in the trailer with these people in the morning. Like you go to the where the unit base is, and there's the trailers and things, and you get called into makeup. And I remember I walked into, I think it was my best friend's wedding, and then the next day was the first day of shooting, and I was the best man, so I was slightly hungover, I have to say. And I got there, and you're into the trailer, and then you're called into makeup. My cat's just crawling all over the table, so sorry if it shakes the laptop. Called into the makeup trailer, and I just sort of sat there, and Guy Pearce is there, and then Colin Firth is 2 seats down. And you're chatting, but it's day one, and so, like I was saying earlier, you're trying to be as cool as you can, but you're just like, oh my god! And after a couple of weeks, it's a little bit more relaxed, of course, and you're still keeping the respect for them. But that was a real sort of a day of, oh my god, you know what's going on? Yesterday I was, you know, dancing to Come On Eileen or whatever, and then suddenly you're sat here next to Guy Pearce and etc. And I think that was one of those lovely moments of just, again, that little pinch me of this is a crazy gig. And I did a film called Breathe, which, as you mentioned earlier, Claire Foy, Andrew Garfield, and it was directed by Andy Serkis. And so you've got sort of just a wonderful group of people. The day that we shot it, or my bit in that. Silly things that you're stood there chatting in between takes, and as they're doing the set, and it was me, Andrew, and Claire under this sort of, I don't know what it was, like a canopy, like a rain canopy thing, but it just collapsed on all three of us, and just sort of you suddenly felt like you got punched in the head, and I couldn't quite work out what had happened. And it's a stupid, like, it was no one's fault, no one kicked off, there was no weirdness about it, but suddenly you're all just taken back to that ridiculous thing of, you know, like an umbrella going wrong in the street. You see that happening constantly. It was just those little moments that you're part of, which you forget until, you know, 5 years later you're having a chat like this or whatever. But it's lovely sometimes when you're reminded just the normality of the situation, and trying not to take yourself out of it and be like, that's so and so, because you've grown up with some of these people, you know, and watch them and admire them. And Andy Serkis, again, lovely guy, very generous director, very, very nice to be a part of that film in such a small capacity, but really lovely memories with lots of people.
It's in your showreel, and you've got a really funny, well, I mean, it's kind of darkly comic in the sense of what's happening to the character when he's like, can I sit in the front? And you're like, well, we built it for you in the back, so you've got a bit more room. He's like, but can I sit in the front? You're like, I mean, it's an option. Yeah. And it's like a really, it's a really kind of poignant but there's a real nice element of kind of humor to it. Just going off the back of that, though, Harry, I was going to say, out of all of the kind of well-known actors and kind of crazy big stars you've worked with, what's the best advice they've given you, and have you kind of taken that on? Has that helped kind of craft the way you take on a role or the way that you look at projects from now on?
I suppose, well, yes and no. Like, it is that thing of never wanting to overstep the mark, never wanting to disturb people, all that sort of stuff, but depending on process. So I've got to say, I've never really, it's not that you would ever sit there and grill someone. It's observing for me. And when you're on a film set with somebody, it's their way of preparing. I think that what took me a while when I started doing film and television is it took a while to sort of allow yourself to actually focus, because there's so much happening behind the camera. There's so many things all around you, and the sound people and all that. It's not that they don't care if you're any good, of course, but they've got so much to do themselves that you just need to do your thing, and that you need to sort of close your brain in a little bit and just focus on what you need to do. Do it all with the boom right here, and then with something right here, and then if you're faking a shot or whatever because they've had to go off, it's not even them you're talking to, all that sort of stuff. And so what I've noticed with working with certain people is watching them prep for a take. And I think depending on how people do it, depending on the scene, of course, if it's a lighter thing or if it's just a brief walking through a corridor, is a very different matter to a massive argument, etc. And it's watching people focus. It's watching people keep their focus as well, because like I say, it's such a busy environment. You need to keep in that way. And it's fascinating sometimes when you do watch films, you know that that's been a long day or that's been a huge shoot, and yet they've managed to contain that performance and give exactly what's expected of them. With regards to advice, there's an amazing actor called Ron Cook, who is a name perhaps people won't recognise, but he's in Hot Fuzz. I've done quite a few plays with him. It was in Mr. Selfridge, which is a ITV drama with Jeremy Piven, I think, and an amazing actor that's been around for a long, long time. And Ron, I was sat next to Ron, I think one of the first plays I ever did with Ron, and he writes at the top of the script on the front cover, KISS, K, and then with dots in between, KISS, and it's keep it simple, stupid. And that's his mantra to himself. And I have to say, I've sort of adopted that myself. And I try to either jot that down somewhere, remind myself of that, because we can get very in our heads. You can get all these things I'm saying about whether it's the person sat next to you you've admired for years, or you're just panicked about it or whatever. So Ron Cook's advice, or I asked him about it and then he explained, but keep it simple, stupid is the one that really stands out for me, because it's a great mantra in many things in life, but it's a great thing for a performance to kind of think, you do what you need to do, and if you need to bring it up, that's the director's job. That they'll be there to push you more. But just for your own sake, for the words that are on the script, trying to keep it simple, not let yourself get run away, because it's difficult, and you can, like I say, you can get overwhelmed. And I was going to say, if it's okay, I was thinking about this earlier today. One thing which isn't really talked about is, when you're at drama school or in the kind of general chats about acting, is the small parts. And I, again, my CV's there. I'm not trying to hide anything when I tell people what people always say, what have you been in? And for television and film, especially, the parts that I play are quite small. They're supporting roles, or they're sometimes they've got a number after them. If I don't have a number after my character, I'm doing all right. But it's a really different game sometimes when you're on a set for a day or you're on a set for a few days. You're trying to be, it's like your first day at work is almost your last day at work, so there's no time to kind of become yourself properly with these people. And it's a really interesting part of the business, which is, a lot of my friends are the same. We say in acting, there's these people up here. There's people perhaps not working at that point, and then there's a lot of people in the middle who are filling up these roles. When you watch television and film, you're watching somebody, just a couple of words to the lead and off they go. But you know that actor is shitting it, because there's times, it was the second film I did with Michael Grandage, he said this to me, a film called My Policeman, which is Harry Styles, David Dawson, Emma Corrin. Really lovely, beautiful film about sort of gay, I don't know, troubles in the 60s and with regards to homosexuality and all that sort of thing. And my part in that is tiny, and Michael me were talking about it, and you're almost more terrified because you've got a couple of words to say sometimes, not even a whole line. You're integral. We can fluff it up as much as we want. You're integral. There's no small parts, all that stuff. However, you get there on the set, you've got a tiny thing to say, and you just need to nail it because these guys, they've been filming for 3 months, and you're at the end of the gig. And I think it's a real thing to kind of anyone listening or watching or whatever. If that's the sort of the part of the job that you end up kind of doing, there can be a little bit of you sometimes. What can I say? You're always aspiring to do better, but that's where your lot kind of takes you, and you end up doing these small parts. It's just a lovely thing to be a part of it all, and you just want to do the best that you can in those small roles. And I think it's worth reminding people that, again, go back to keep it simple, just trying to be the best that you can, because those parts are needed. They do need somebody sometimes to fix the wheelchair in the back of the van or whatever it may be, depending on the film.
Well, to mention Fassbender again, he said something like that. He said when he had smaller parts building up to his career, when he's in the hotel, he said that's the hardest gigs, he was saying. He says when you're the lead, you've got, like you're saying, mumps on set and stuff like that. But he was saying the fact that to anybody watching that film, if you're the postman or you're the bar guy and you're serving, you have to be at the same level as all of the other performers so that it doesn't look odd. He was saying for the continuity of the movie, they just go, oh, well, yeah, of course, that's the next door neighbor that's witnessed this, or that's the mechanic that's just fixing something, or that's the priest from around the corner. You just believe that world. But it's like you're saying, you have to be almost kind of resonating at the same kind of level as those kind of movie stars, man. It's crazy, especially like you say in that scene in Breathe when you're opposite Claire Foy from The Crown and all this kind of stuff, and you got Andrew Garfield from movies like Spider-Man and all these kind of things. You're like, Jesus, I'm staring into Spider-Man's eyes and I'm trying to keep my shit together. You always have to
make it weird, don't you, Drew? Just staring into his eyes.
Well, yeah, but technically you are. Like when you're acting, you look at another person. But this moves me nicely onto, I mean, it's interesting to hear you talk about Tom Hiddleston. Like you were understudying him a couple of times. I imagine you guys having a coffee and kind of chatting and stuff like that. And then you guys were in a scene together in that amazing TV series, The Night Manager. Yeah. And it's not just a scene. I mean, it's an epic fight scene. I mean, can you tell us about that process? And I thought you were brilliant, mate. Like my wife and I love that show. And when you turned up, I screamed at the TV like that bit in DiCaprio when he goes. I was like, "Babe, that's my mate Harry." Like, and she's like, "What?" I was like, "That's the guy, man."
Did you want to give him a sort of extra jab for all them times that he wasn't sick when you were an understudy? Extra sort of one out.
No, The Night Manager actually was before that. It came before the play, so it was nice to. Yeah, nice to have a second sort of crack of working together and getting to know Tom a bit more. The Night Manager, it was a great gig, lovely. I love John le Carre, and I've got more into him subsequently since The Night Manager. I have to say the Smiley books and Tinker Tailor and all that sort of thing. I mean, it's one of I can nerd out on those all day long, and to be a part of that. And le Carre was at the screening of the first. There was a screening of the first 2 episodes, and I'm in episode 2, and he was there, and that was one of those things of standing there talking to John le Carre, trying just to not, because he was such a fiercely intelligent man, never to sound like an absolute bellend in front of John le Carre. That was sort of my mission if I could. And with the part, Barry Harlow, for those that don't know, it was Tom Hiddleston's character had to kind of form this sort of fake background, didn't he, really? And in order to do that, he had to pretend, to sort of, I think it was down in Devon and to be like a drug runner, and I was a undercover agent, but pretending to basically help him with the drugs and stuff. So we had a couple of little scenes, and there was this cottage. It was a lot of it was done. The director Susanna Beer, she was sort of part of the Dogma school, so it was that idea of natural light, natural sound, as much as you could, and locations. And we filmed in this tiny little cottage to begin with, which was where Prince William randomly had his stag do, I think. And it was this cottage which is right out on the end of this, almost by a cliff and very remote part of town. I don't know whether Prince William had a great time, but it was a very interesting place to shoot. And we then had the scene in the pub which we're talking about. we improvised, which again was a real shocker. There was a brilliant adaptation of the book, and but it was every now and then you could just improvise these bits. So if you ever see the scene, Tom Hiddleston sat down, I walk in. It's like a fake fight, isn't it? It's a real fight, but it's a fake situation to scare the local drug dealers, I think, away. And I walk in and Tom sat there, and we do this, have a little bit of bantery chat, which I say was improvised, which I was a bit like, oh, right, we're keeping that in, are we? Well, it's not just, we're not just making it up just for kind of setups. I think that's what we're going to do. And then what does he do? He smashes a glass, whacks my head against a pole, and then sort of drags me out and beats me up outside. And it was a night shoot, so it was a long day. I think people were sort of, you can get, people get tetchy, people get touchy, and you've got a lot of background artists, and there's lots of people to deal with in those scenes. And I had padding. I remember they gave me like this, almost like, without the bulkiness, but it was a bit like American football player padding. It was kind of quite thick, and shoulders. I had stuff on my legs, and it was just a case of selling it is the main thing with those fights, isn't it? Of course, none of it's happening, but with the pole in the pub, that was maybe a bit easier. I think I stopped myself with that, and it was when Tom dragged me outside. I was thrown over this onto this car bonnet and punched, and you're trying to. Well, Drew, I don't know if you remember back in drama school with with fight training and all that sort of stuff. You always wanted to do the best you could, so it looked like the films you grew up with. Yeah, exactly, cheeky nap and all that stuff, and mate, you wanted to do the best you could. It was good fun. But when I exactly, which I used to adore when I was a kid. So again, it's that sort of bit of life coming true. Yeah. We've got to be careful. And what was it? I used to have the toy, the ring. So I practiced quite a lot when I was a kid. But I did have a stunt double for just riding off on the motorbike. They wouldn't let me ride off on the motorbike. So I got beaten up by Tom, and then I ran behind the car, and then the stunt double jumps up and jumps on the motorbike and races off, which is good, actually, because I'm a terrible driver, and I think I'd be terrified. But it was good. It was intense. It was, like I said, it wasn't a long night shoot, but it was getting to that point of wanting to make sure you nailed it as quick as you could, because time was pressing, really.
I think it would have worked though if you were wobbling, because he just kicked the crap out of you. Tom Hiddleston just battered you, so you would, even if you weren't great on the motorbike, it would have worked continuity wise, because he went to town on you, man, and you sold it so well. Yeah. So it looks so violent and so brutal. It's one of the most memorable episodes of the whole season, man. So really kudos, dude. You really, and like you say, just to be in a couple of scenes, but you bring such a kind of gravitas to the role, and it's so memorable, and great choices, like that humor where you're saying, I hope I get a good funeral or a good burial, and it's all very, it's just it was so fun, man. It was so cool to watch.
I'm glad. And like I said, going back to that cottage, it was tight. It was a really tight shoot, and you had crew right up against you, right up against the table that we were sat at. So again, it was a case of focus, sort of honing it in and just trying to not let any of the fluff around you affect you in that particular shoot. Yeah. But it was a lovely experience.
Dude, it was awesome. And you play a very kind of opposite character in I saw your showreel, and it's amazing, dude. It just flies by, man. You play such kind of nuanced characters and such a range as well. It's amazing. You play this really creepy guy, man, in The Curfew. Can you tell us what that was like, and that kind of performance? And
it was the premise, I think, I found really fascinating. For those that don't know, it's basically a slightly dystopian future. Men are curfewed from, I think it's 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. and can't go out. And somebody is murdered, and obviously if it can't be a man, who is it, I guess, is the thing. And so for my part in that is there's a group of young women coming home from a night out. One of them is goading the guys who are in their houses. I think there's a group of lads in a house, and then my chap is just stood there in a dressing gown, and she's sort of calling out to him. We filmed it in this really interesting bit of London, which I can never quite. I was trying to explain it to my wife the other day, where it's going east. It's, I don't know, like Victoria. I want to say. Is there a place called like the Victoria Docks or something? It's on I'm sure the Elizabeth line must touch borders with it towards the east, but it's quite modern townhouses.
Surrey Quays kind of esque, like it looked really,
You're on about by London Bridge.
further east, much.
Isn't the
so close to
Victoria
the
Docks
O2.
near Canada Water?
Yeah. So then maybe it's even
Like
further
the
east.
DLR line sort of thing.
No, so it's out towards just beyond the O2. I'm thinking about it when we drove there.
North Greenwich.
It's a while away, but it's these modern townhouses, and the family that lived in the house that I shot in, because I had to be hidden. I had a person behind a pillar next to me telling me when to move and stuff. But the family were there, and it was about 3 a.m, and the kids, they were supposed to be going to school the next day, but we were just sort of like wandering around the lounge, being a bit like, who's this crazy ginger bald guy in a dressing gown in our lounge? But I'm sure
Massive beard.
yeah, exactly.
Dystopian beard.
Just stare.
Wait, so
staring out the
you were
window, like-
filming it, and the people that own the house, it wasn't a set, it was someone's house.
Yeah, so they sort of a few of the houses. I don't know how they do these things, but they I think they just put letters through the door saying we're going to film in your area. If you'd be happy for us to shoot, they are compensated, of course, but there's wires and there's all sorts. And in between shots, you step out and you just sit down. And the kids came down. I think the dad was a very nice chap, and he just let the kids come down and chat to me. And you're just sort
That's
of
hilarious.
You feel so like you're encroaching on them. But it was.
It's
Well,
like
after that-
ultra realism. Sorry, Harry. That's like
Yeah,
ultra realism
totally.
because it's like you're seeing the actors that you're then watching in that show like a few weeks later or whatever, and you're like, hang on a minute, they're inside my house with a cup of tea, like saying hello to my kids or whatever, and then like literally going out and being a crazy, creepy dude in the show.
Exactly. It was such as the way with these things. Sometimes the time pressure. It was about 2 a.m. I know they had a real tight limit with regards to sound. Like a police car, my character, he stops this woman, tries to grab her, and then the way that the men are monitored within the show, the police, almost like Minority Report type thing, that crimes are sort of not predicted, but they know where the men should be, and when a man breaks his curfew and goes out of his house, the police hone in on him. So we had a police car zoom in, we had the blue lights, but there was no sound because it was 2 a.m, so we couldn't do that. And I was dragged into this police van, and when I get into the van, if you see it, that they kept it in the take, I fell and I really hurt my wrist, but because I had handcuffs on. But you carry on in a take, and you don't want to muck up a take. But they kept. I'm glad in a way because it was a fucker. I tripped going into this police van, and they kept that bit in. But it was it was interesting and a lot of moving parts. So the guy who had his Steadicam, huge big contraption, sort of massive rig over his shoulders, knackered of course because it was take after take is exhausting for him. So you're trying to just make sure. Same with the night manager. It's. I think I've told a lot of my friends. Somebody said this to me in the night manager just before doing that scene with Hiddleston. One of the crew said to me, "Get beaten up quickly," and you're just like, "I'll do the best I can," because it's slightly out of your hands. But like I say, you don't want to prolong these things because of time and money and people being knackered. But curfew, yeah, I liked it, and it was an interesting shoot. It was, like I said, it was a long one because we got onto the set about 7 o'clock and we were there till about 3 a.m. So you're just trying to make sure you hit your mark, do your thing, and not disrupt the flow if you can.
Well, mate, again, I thought you were brilliant in that, man. And you played such a scary character, man. That scene you have with that girl character, and she was brilliant. I mean, you had such a great kind of rapport. Like, I mean, what a great actor to work opposite. But it felt so real. Like the way it was filmed, it feels like we're right there with you, and it's all happening in real time. Like it was really, really powerful and atmospheric, man. I just want to kind of change tact a little bit in the sense that we talked about like stage and film and TV. You are the voice of Sherlock Holmes in the amazing podcast that is Sherlock & Co. And that's directed by our friend as well, Adam Jarrell from the Dominion as well. Mm-hmm. So I've got kind of two questions, I guess. One, what's it like being directed by a mate that's kind of written and directing this amazing kind of almost like a radio play in a way with such massive high production value. But what's it like being directed for radio?
It's very different, and our particular version of that medium is done in a way where it's very isolating in a way. And in fact, I'm in the perfect room because I record all my lines in that very wardrobe right there. In that I open the wardrobe, I've got the shelf, I've got my laptop, which I'm using right now, my microphone, and that's it. And it's just me. And the way that we record the show is Watson lives in New Zealand. I only met him for the first time. We had a fan event, like a meet and greet thing back in earlier this year, and Paul Waggett, his name, brilliant Paul Waggett, came over, and that was the first time I'd met him after a year and a half, 2 years of recording the show, because we record solo. And so you record the line 3, 4, 5 times, depending on what sort of line it is or how you feel, you need to tackle it slightly differently. With trying to nail it, like Adam, the wonderful Adam Jarrell, and Joel, Joel Emery, who both co-creators, co-writers, co-directors, they always have been quite clear about, how they wanted the approach done. But because they're not with me, when you record it, especially the longer, now that we've been doing it sort of 2 years or so, I can hear Paul's voice. We've got Martin Silva, who plays Mariana, who is the third wheel of the trio, sort of solving the crimes and things. I can hear them so well now. We know each other much better. When it was right at the beginning, I was famously awful for sending off about 20 different versions of yes. And you sound like Toast of London, and every time he does, you're just, how many times do you say?
Classically trained actor.
Exactly. Yes. And I think I pissed them off because the amount of edits they had to do, because I just you didn't know exactly what they wanted. So again, trust in yourself, keep it simple, as Rob would say, and just try to get it across. But it's been an amazing ride. It's ongoing, and it's really, really sort of fascinating thing to be a part of, and I love it. And what I didn't realise about it, talking as I was earlier about the quieter times, because it's been a consistent thing, every couple of weeks the next script comes through, and it's kept me kept those sort of acting juices going, if you will. Sort of every few weeks I know I've got another script coming, and you just want to nail it for them. It's partly that thing, like you say, Adam is a good friend and back in the Dominion again, and we've always had a similar sort of sense of humour and a good relationship between us. But having him on the other side, slightly more with regard to sort of being one of my bosses now, I want to try and do the best I can for him in both of those capacities. I want to do the best performance I can, but I always want to make sure that he's happy with, and Joel of course as well, and the listeners. But you want it to be, never piss him off. And very rarely, but I've done it a few times where I've gone to his flat or he's come here, and we have been together when we've recorded, and it's a lovely dynamic. It's not always possible time wise and things, but it makes it a slightly more concise experience, because he knows, he can hear what he wants the episode to sound like, or certain scenes to how he wants them to flow, and you'll do a line and then he'll quickly sort of jump in and then correct you or alter or suggest something, and it means that you do get that sort of immediate response, I suppose, because as I said, especially when there's the denouement at the end of the episode, I've got sort of a couple of pages to read and record. I'll do them, I'll send it off, and you're just a bit like, I hope that was not shit, and then you wait a couple of days for your pickups to come back, and then it's amazing, the technology, because we're running, or we've been to India and on tuk-tuks and all this sort of adventures that Sherlock Holmes has in a modern retelling, which we're doing, which is Watson as if he's doing a podcast instead of writing the diaries, for people that don't listen or haven't heard it. And you're fast paced, and you're trying to, like I say, as you were saying earlier about trying to hit the right emotion of that scene. You're doing that cold in your room, it's a Sunday morning, or you're not quite feeling it, so you're just kind of like, you knuckle down, and you really have to focus because you've got nobody to engage with. There's no feedback, there's no other actors. It's interesting. It's a great thing to be a part of.
It's like an epic adventure where you never leave your cupboard, yet the sound design and all the Foley and everything.
Yeah, exactly. Dear old Mr. Ben. I don't know what outfit I'd choose, but something lovely.
Have you heard some back though, man? Have you heard it? Like, it is so epic in scale. Like the production value, like you can hear like a car driving, and you hear like the wheels going over like the little pebbles and pulling up, and then the door opening, and like, I mean, it's just, the attention to detail, the team that are creating the atmosphere of sound to match the performances from all you amazing voiceover actors, like that's just, I mean, do you know what I mean?
I agree, and I do. I have to say, I listen to all of them, and it's partly to hear the whole thing together. It's fascinating, but also it's for me to, if I've so sometimes there's a slightly longer gap between if it's we've done adaptation of one of the novels earlier in the year, and that was a 10-parter, so you've got a lot more time before the next one has to be recorded. And so if I've not recorded one for say 4 or 5 weeks, I'll listen back to some of the older ones, especially the more recent older ones, because they've changed as characters the more they've got to know each other. So they're slightly more relaxed, or they're slightly different than they were right at the beginning. And so I'll always try to just pick up the odd little bit from here and there, just to make sure I'm not suddenly going off on a completely different tangent. And you're right, the way they splice it together, the fact that Paul is in New Zealand, and we're not in the same room when we record it, it blows my mind. And also the other weird thing, which I've told Adam this, is I'll listen back and I can't remember saying half of it, and I'm just like, I just don't remember recording those bits, and so some of it comes as a nice surprise because I'm still sort of following the stories, despite the fact I should really know what the hell's happening. But I've totally don't.
That's what I do. I constantly watch this back because I always forget what Drew does for a job. I generally forget Kev's name, so I have to constantly remember that I know him.
Yeah, that's it. Keep in touch. It's nice,
The continuity of Rage Whale. I'm forever changing jobs, or not having a job. So that's quite an interesting trajectory of my life. Anyway, but I was going to say, did you do? There was like a cocktail. There was like a Sherlock Holmes cocktail bar event in London.
Oh yes,
that blew up and was huge. I don't mean blew up as in like it exploded. I mean it was really popular.
72 killed or something.
yeah. They had all this dynamite under the stage. Very realistic when people just got blown up. No, but it was massively popular, and you had loads of kind of like influencers on Instagram and TikTok visiting it and kind of talking about how amazing the night was, like drinking kind of cocktails and having this immersive experience. But the actors, i.e. you and a few other cast members, are kind of like walking around, and it's kind of a bit more of a kind of promenade experience. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well remembered. It was they did it. We did it the first time in 2021, and then last year they rebooted it, which I wasn't a part of. But when we first did it, it was a place near London Bridge, an old warehouse, lots of wood and tables and chairs everywhere, and you had a stage in the middle, and it was an adaptation of The Hound of the Baskervilles, and it was a sort of dining experience, and I was Watson in that instead of Sherlock. And with Watson, it was really interesting looking at him as somebody with basically the way I started with Watson is he has PTSD. He's just come back from the wars in Afghanistan. He's injured. He talks in the diaries in the original stories, about the hell of war, and that bit of it is so well explained in Sherlock and Co. in the podcast. The very first episode is, if anyone's going to listen but never listen again, listen to that first one, because the sound design of what happens to Watson in modern day warfare, he goes to Ukraine, in fact, it's not Afghanistan, but it's remembering that about Watson. And when you watch Jude Law's version in the Guy Ritchie films or Martin Freeman, it's keeping that in mind, because he's a damaged character, and I think that's a great sort of place to start with him, because you watch the early Sherlock Holmes films with Basil Rathbone. Watson is a bit bumbly. He's a bit sort of puffs out his chest, and he's kind of the comedy foil in a way to the situation. But you remember that key thing about him coming back from war. Well, that's it. I didn't. Well, bless him. He's sort of. I've seen the first of those, I think, and they're all right. I quite like them. I think it's a bit of a different. I've never seen what people do.
Series really got me into it. Marlon Cumberbatch.
Yeah, well, people off. No, go on.
Not Marlon. Thingy Cumberbatch.
Benedict.
Yeah, I know the one you mean.
Eggs Benedict.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. I bet he gets that all the time, doesn't he? Probably.
But that's not me trying to be funny. That was literally just a way to remember. Some people say cucumber patch or whatever, so it's like to remember the second part. But
people always comment on the Instagram page of it and things, how and some of the, not that I read all the reviews, but the more detractive, what would I say, the slightly more, well, I don't know, the ones that don't like it really, the 2-star reviews just say he's ripping off Cumberbatch, and I've never seen it. I've never seen the BBC Sherlock, but it's more about, you're kind of two slightly posh blokes. Mine's all fake, by the way. It's state school. It's just Amdram made me sound the way I do.
Really old RP, darling. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. That was it. It was just, it's all fake. But I've never seen it, and you kind of, I'll take that as a compliment, if anything, if people are comparing me to him. But it's the version that we had in the hall, if you will, with it had its challenges, because people like to drink when they have dinner, and they also like to call out when you're acting. And so there were several moments which, you kind of ploughed through, and it was a tough crowd some nights, but you got to the bit. We once had a guy, when the hound appears and Watson's, I'm stood there with this gun and I'm shouting down, and Sherlock's next to me. A man from the audience got up to try and help us kill the hound on one night, and that wasn't particularly helpful, but he sat down eventually. So we faced that down as well. That's another lovely thing about just recording in the wardrobe, is, except for Reg, there's not many people that interrupt me really. But it was it's a great production, and I presume it'll have another incarnation at some point, so it's worth catching. The Lost Estate is the chaps that produce it.
Harry, I was going to say, before we have to go, can you give us a tour of your wardrobe, your exciting wardrobe?
If there's a line kind of witch,
it's
the body just slumps out.
So untidy.
I'm kidding. Say, if it's a proper wardrobe, you don't show that.
No, it is a proper wardrobe, and it's full of absolute shit. But I prop my microphone on books, and I've got cushions to kind of sound. The other people that record, they've got these amazing little sound booths.
Yeah,
I'm keeping it.
I thought the way you said it, it's like set up as a sound booth 100% of the time. But if it's a wardrobe, you have to take crap out of to do. That's different.
Exactly. It's literally my wardrobe.
We don't want to see your personal belongings.
We've got professional setups.
You're like squirrel onesies and all that kind of.
We have real professional setups.
Well, you guys have got the mics and.
Well, you say that. This isn't plugged in, and my phone is currently sellotaped to a coffee mug on top of 3 shoeboxes on a Nesta table. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and Drew sat in front of the fridge.
That was a Temu job as well.
Yeah.
That was like a cool silver backing, but when he moves back and the light changes, it's just the fridge.
It's my fridge, baby.
We did go through about a 3 or 4 month period where we thought Drew had actually been kidnapped and was a prisoner of war, because he looked a bit dishevelled. And it did look like, holding up a sign every day, they're treating me well, they're not hurting me.
Well, I said to Kev the other day, I said, you can tell my background's getting better because James has stopped taking the piss out of my background.
There's nothing.
It's been a good 50 episodes,
off shelves
so
now, is
done
there?
well.
Well, yeah, but the books weren't on a shelf. They were balancing on a radiator.
Even stranger.
Mate, the tough times of trying to, run a podcast, man. It has
absolutely. I take my hat off to everyone that does it.
I know, right?
Yeah, it's
crazy
fun.
bastards.
Honestly, it's been awesome having you on as well. We realise the time as well, and we don't want to take up your evening. It's got a bit late, but we especially like we said earlier, I appreciate you making it work. Cause I know you've been in Thailand, and how many holidays have you been on this last month?
I know, it's really embarrassing. I went to Florida, and 2 weeks later I went to Thailand. So I just sound so bougie, but I promise. I borrowed the money from my parents to go to Florida because it was a family holiday. And because of our job, my family's been on holiday with my sister, my grown-up nieces for years. They keep going on these holidays, and I just happened to have this week, and I was like, right, but I've had to borrow the money of my parents, and so it's coming out the inheritance. I'm never going to get that back. But it was a lovely time. It was lovely to go back, and then my wife and me, we just got back from Thailand yesterday. So it's been a bougie April, but I promise
You'll knuckle down now, Harry. You'll knuckle down.
Yeah, exactly. I promise. Back to the grindstone. But
Junie's going to Japan and Alaska and all over the shop. I might go to Cornwall this year. That's how bougie I am.
It's lovely. Support local is good. It's always nice.
Drew's going down the seaside.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's next door to my work, man. So sweet.
Drew's going to Iceland for the shop.
Yeah, nice.
If in doubt, yeah.
That's it.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It's a real treat to be here. So thank you for having me.
Harry, you're absolute legend, man. Thank you so much, dude.
When Drew mentioned you, we all thought that this would be a great guest to have on. You got loads of experience, loads of interesting stories, and we didn't have to talk too much because you had great stories, which is even better.
So that's been lovely. Thank you and you made it work as well. So we had to keep delaying, but I'm really glad you managed to find the time.
Harry, absolute legend.
Oh well, thank you so much.
This has been Rage Whale. Thanks for hanging out with us. We hope you had a whale of a time.
Oh, wait! Just before you head off to listen to another one of our episodes, I'm not going to ask you to give us a follow and a 5-star review or follow our social media such as Instagram and TikTok and YouTube, although that is your choice. But we would like to tell you about a new website we have called ragewhale.tmill.com, where you can get some merchandise to support us. Hoodies, t-shirts and mugs. There is a link here and on our social media profiles. Thank you so much for listening again. See you next time.